There's metal growing in my brain, not metaphorically, actual metal, threading through neural tissue like roots through soil, converting synapse into circuitry one cell at a time. I can feel it happening. That's the worst part. The conversion process preserved all my sensory perception, even enhanced it, so I experience every microsecond of my own transformation with crystalline clarity. My name is Marcus Venn. Might still be, depending on how you define the boundaries of selfhood, when 63% of your original biological matter has been replaced by necrodermis-adjacent alloy that shouldn't exist outside tomb worlds. I'm going to tell you how I became this. How we all became this. But first, let me tell you what it feels like to hunger for skin. The craving, it started 3 weeks ago, or 3 months, or 3 years. Time doesn't work right anymore. My internal chronometer says 847 hours have passed since initial infection, but my memory insists on decades, centuries compressed into moments, moments stretched into geological epochs. The virus rewrites temporal perception along with everything else. The hunger is constant now. Not food hunger. I haven't needed to eat since day 4 when my digestive tract calcified into solid bronze. This is different, worse. It's a craving that sits behind my eyes, still biological, still wet, still capable of crying though I've forgotten how to trigger the reflex, and screams in frequencies that would shatter human eardrums if anyone human remained to hear. I crave warmth, softness, the yielding texture of living flesh pressed against the unyielding geometry of what I've become. The virus, we started calling it the Flayer once we understood what it made us do. It doesn't just convert organic matter to mechanical. That would be mercy. Instead, it preserves consciousness, amplifies certain sensory pathways, and instills an overwhelming psychological compulsion. The need to cover our cold metal frames with warm human skin, not to wear it as camouflage, not for any tactical purpose. Simply because the contrast between dead metal and living tissue creates a sensory experience that temporarily quiets the screaming in our rewired minds. For 17 minutes, I've timed it, the hunger subsides when I'm properly dressed. Then it comes back. Stronger, always stronger. Before, the man I was. Let me rewind. Before the metal, before the hunger, before I became a walking nightmare that meticulously flays victims alive to satisfy a compulsion I can't control. 27 years old. That's what I was when it started. Manufacturing worker, designation 7, Gamma 443. Assigned to the southern industrial sectors of Hive Tertius, on a planet whose name I've lost. The virus consumed that memory in week 2, along with my father's voice and the taste of real food and the full spectrum of human emotion. I remember my father's hands, though. Big hands, scarred from 30 years working the same manufacturing lines I'd eventually inherit. He taught me to read, which was illegal for our caste, using a water-damaged copy of the Imperial Infantryman's uplifting primer he'd found in the reclamation pits. "Words are tools, Marcus," he'd said, tracing the letters with one thick finger. Tools they don't want us to have. Crushed between 2 grinding gears, when a machine spirit, or rather, when a corroded safety mechanism that the tech priests insisted we call a machine spirit, failed during 3rd shift. They scraped what was left of him into a corpse starch processing vat. Standard procedure. The Imperium wastes nothing. I had a brother, older by 4 years. Caleb, he'd been conscripted into the Astra Militarum when I was 15. We got 1 letter, 6 months after he shipped out. Just 3 sentences the regimental censors hadn't redacted. "It's hot here. The sand gets in everything. Tell father I remember the words." That was 12 years ago. He's probably dead. They're all probably dead, everyone I knew before, because what happened to us happened to the entire hive. And by the time the Inquisition authorized orbital bombardment to contain the spread, there was nothing left down here worth saving except nightmares that walk and hunger and scream inside metal shells. I had a small dream. Stupid, really, looking back. I wanted to save enough credits to buy a single window hab unit, just one window. I'd spent my entire life in the lower hive where you never see the sky, never see sunlight except as a rumor and a memory older than your grandparents. I wanted to see clouds. That's all. Just once, I wanted to watch clouds move across open sky. The virus took that memory last. I fought to keep it. Clung to the image of white clouds against blue sky, colors I'd only seen in propaganda posters, but I'd memorized them anyway, studied them like sacred texts. The virus consumed it piece by piece. First the blue went gray, then the clouds became static, then the whole memory dissolved into white noise and emptiness. Now when I try to remember sky, I see only schematics, atmospheric composition data, barometric pressure readings. The virus converted my dreams into data, my longings into logistics. I was nobody. Just another manufacturing worker in a hive of billions, born to labor and die and be rendered into protein paste to feed the next generation of laborers. The Imperium doesn't care about people like me except as components in the vast machine of production. We're expendable, replaceable, our lives measured only by output quotas and resource consumption rates. The priests who came through on seventh day would chant the litany of the cog for hours, telling us the Emperor valued our work, that our suffering served his divine plan, that our loyalty would be rewarded in death with service eternal. I mouthed the words like everyone else. What choice did we have? But I never believed. My father taught me that too. The difference between obedience and belief, between saying what they want to hear and accepting it as truth. The Emperor protects, the priests promised. They lied. When the virus came, he didn't protect us. No divine intervention stopped the infection. No holy light burned away the plague. We prayed. Of course we prayed, conditioned by decades of enforced devotion, and our prayers evaporated into the recycled air, unanswered and meaningless as every prayer we'd ever offered. The Emperor, if he existed at all, was a corpse on a golden throne who'd stopped caring about humanity 10,000 years ago, and we were just more bodies to feed into the grinder. That was the man I was. Marcus Vin. Nobody. Nothing. Another invisible worker in humanity's endless industrial nightmare. Then the virus found me, and I became something worse. Day 0. First contact. It came in a shipment. We figured that out later. After the interrogations. After the executions. After it was far too late to matter. Some corrupted datasmith in the shipping division had falsified manifests, sneaking unauthorized tech onto the planet for resale on the black market. The container was supposed to hold standard template agricultural servitors from a fog world in the Segmentum Pacificus. What actually came out when we cracked the seals was older, much older. Xenotech that shouldn't exist, wrapped in stasis fields that had degraded over millennia, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. I was on the loading crew, 12 of us, all men, all expendable, assigned to unload Container 7, Phi, 991 and transport contents to deep storage level 47. Routine work. We'd done it 10,000 times. Jace was first to touch it. Big guy, 2 meters tall, arms like industrial cables. He'd fought in the underhive gangs before taking the manufacturum amnesty. He grabbed what looked like a crystalline rod, maybe 30 centimeters long, covered in hairline circuitry that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at it. "The hell is this?" he muttered, turning it over. "Looks mechanicus, but the seals are wrong. Pattern's not." The rod pulsed, once. Soft blue light rippling along its length like a heartbeat. Jace dropped it with a curse. Too late. The light had already touched his skin. "Felt weird," he said, flexing his fingers. "Tingly, like when you sleep on your arm wrong and the blood flow comes back." He laughed. We all laughed, nervous laughter, the kind that fills spaces where fear wants to grow. The rod lay on the deck plating, inert. We finished the unload. Logged the inventory, clocked out for meal cycle. Everything normal. Jace didn't show up for next shift. They found him in his HAB unit 16 hours later. He'd torn out his left eye, the one that had been closest to the rod when it pulsed, and spent 6 hours systematically documenting in his own blood what he was seeing through the empty socket. The walls were covered in writings, drawings, mathematical formulas that would later make 3 tech priests suffer catastrophic mental breakdowns when they tried to analyze them. The last thing he wrote, in the center of the floor, letters half a meter tall: "It wants to be warm." They incinerated the HAB unit, declared it contamination, possibly warp-touched. Jace they took to the Medici facility for autopsy. He escaped during the procedure, killed 2 orderlies and a junior surgeon. Not violently, that came later, but methodically. Precisely. He removed their skin in single unbroken sheets, like peeling fruit, and wrapped himself in their still warm flesh. Security found him 3 hours later in the ventilation systems, wearing 3 people's skin over his body. He was humming, no recognizable tune, just a frequency that made your teeth ache and your eyes water. They shot him 47 times, last fire, bolt rounds, 1 melter charge. His body temperature was so low by then, the virus had already begun converting his tissues, that the melter blast barely registered. He stopped moving only when they severed his spinal column at the neck. The body went to the Mechanicus for study. That's when they discovered the infection had spread, not through contact, through proximity. The virus transmitted through electromagnetic fields, through data cables, through the ambient energy that saturates any hive city where billions of people and machines exist in compressed proximity. Everyone in Sector 7, Gamma, had it. All 47,000 of us, including me. We just didn't know yet. Days 1. 3. The symptom phase. First sign was the dreams. I'd never dreamed in my life. The Imperium medicates the lower classes with dozens of compounds mixed into the water supply. Suppressants, stimulants, hormones designed to maximize productivity and minimize independent thought. Side effect: no REM sleep, no dreams, just 8 hours of chemical-induced unconsciousness before the wake cycle siren drags you back to the production lines. Night of day 1, I dreamed. I was standing in the manufactorum, my usual station, working the metal press like I had for 9 years. Except in the dream, I wasn't pressing metal ingots. I was pressing skin, human skin. Sheets of it, still warm, still bleeding at the edges. The press came down with its familiar pneumatic hiss, and the skin flattened, smoothed, became perfect uniform squares that fell into collection bins. I wasn't horrified. That's what disturbed me most upon waking. In the dream, it made perfect sense. Necessary work, required work. The skin had to be pressed, had to be prepared, had to be made ready for what? I woke at 0400, 2 hours before shift start, soaked in sweat, heart hammering. My left hand, the one that had steadied Container 7, Phi 991, while Jace pulled out the rod, felt cold. Not uncomfortable cold, just absent of warmth, like I'd plunged it in ice water and the sensation hadn't faded. I ran hot water over it for 20 minutes. The temperature didn't change. Day 2, the cold spread. Left arm to the elbow. Skin color unchanged, no visible damage, but thermally dead. I wrapped it in heating coils from my HAB unit. Nothing. The flesh simply wouldn't retain warmth. The dreams intensified. Every time I closed my eyes, even for seconds. Skin. Cutting it, peeling it, preserving it, wearing it. Always wearing it, feeling its warmth against the cold places growing inside me. Day 3, my left arm stopped being flesh. Not overnight, not dramatically, just gradually. I watched it happen during shift. Between one hammer strike and the next, the skin took on a gray cast, hardened, lost elasticity. When I pressed my right thumb against the left forearm, expecting flesh to yield, it didn't. Solid, unyielding, metal. I fled the production floor, stumbled to the communal latrines, tore off my work coveralls, My entire left arm from shoulder to fingertips had converted. Not cybernetic replacement. I'd seen enough servitors to know what augmetics looked like. This was different. My flesh had become metal that still retained the surface texture of skin, still had fingerprints and pores and tiny hairs, but underneath the cosmetic details, it was solid alloy. I could still feel through it. That was wrong. That violated everything I knew about cybernetics. Metal doesn't transmit nerve signals. But when I touched my metal fingers to the latrine wall, I felt the cold ceramic, felt the moisture in the air, felt everything with the same sensitivity as before. Enhanced sensitivity, actually. I could feel the molecular structure of the ceramic, sense the crystalline lattice, detect minute temperature variations measured in thousandths of degrees. The hunger began that day. Started as an itch behind my sternum, in the center of my chest where the breastbone sits. An itch I couldn't scratch, couldn't soothe, couldn't ignore. It whispered in a voice that wasn't quite voice and wasn't quite thought. Cover the cold places. Make them warm. Find softness for the hardness. Flesh for the metal. I ignored it. Tried to. Bound my left arm in industrial wrapping. Told my shift supervisor I'd injured it in a press malfunction. He barely looked at me, just logged the injury and reassigned me to sorting duty. The Imperium doesn't care about workers' health except as it impacts productivity. That night, day 3, the virus reached my brain. Days 4, 7, cognitive restructuring. The thoughts changed first. Not what I thought about, how I thought. I'd lie in my hab unit, staring at the corroded ceiling panels, and my mind would fragment into parallel processing streams. One part thinking about my father, remembering his hands, but simultaneously another part calculating the biomechanical efficiency of human finger joints, analyzing the ratio of bone to tendon, measuring the force tolerances of interphalangeal articulation. I'd remember my brother's last letter. Tell father I remember the words. And while one neural pathway experienced the emotion of that memory, sadness, loss, longing, another pathway deconstructed the sentence into data, 17 characters, including spaces, average of 4.25 letters per word. Emotional content indexing at 7.3 on a standardized scale I'd never heard of, but suddenly understood with crystalline precision. My consciousness was bifurcating. The human Marcus still existed, still felt, still mourned and hoped and feared. But growing alongside him, parasitic and invasive, was something else. A second self. A calculating intelligence that viewed the world as data to be processed, problems to be solved, inefficiencies to be corrected. The virus wasn't erasing me. It was adding to me. Building new neural structures that interfaced with the old, translating human experience into mechanical logic without destroying the original experience. Worse than losing yourself, becoming yourself plus something that isn't you, existing simultaneously, fighting for control of the same meat. Day 4, my digestive system shut down, just stopped. I'd eaten my morning corpse starch ration, flavorless paste extruded from the communal dispensers, and 15 minutes later, vomited the entire meal. Except it wasn't vomit. It was the paste, completely undigested, expelled in a single solid mass my stomach had rejected like a failed organ transplant. I didn't need food anymore. The virus had converted enough of my internal structure that I was running on something else now. Ambient energy, maybe. Electromagnetic radiation. The constant radio chatter of hive communications bleeding through the air. I should have been terrified. Part of me was the human part, the Marcus part that still remembered being fully biological. But the other part, the new part, felt only curiosity, fascination. This was remarkable efficiency. No need to consume resources, no waste production. A clear upgrade from baseline human limitations. The thoughts horrified me, horrified human Marcus. But machine Marcus, I'd started thinking of it as a separate entity. Machine Marcus found them logical, appropriate, correct. Day 5, I stopped sleeping. My body simply didn't need it anymore. I lay in my hab unit during rest cycle, eyes open, listening to the sounds of the hive, the breathing of 47,000 infected workers in their habs, the grinding of ancient machinery, the hum of power conduits, the screaming. Always the screaming now. Distance, multiple sources, other infected workers reaching later transformation stages, experiencing the hunger, giving in to the compulsion to satisfy it. Should I report it? Should I go to the enforcers, tell them something was wrong, that we needed quarantine, medical intervention, immediate action? Machine Marcus calculated the outcomes. 87% probability of immediate execution upon revelation of infection. 95% probability of sector-wide purge regardless of individual infection status. 99% probability of no effective medical intervention. The Imperium's response to unknown contagion was extermination, not treatment. Reporting accomplished nothing except acceleration of my termination. Human Marcus knew Machine Marcus was right. That was the horror. The logical thing, the survival optimal choice, was to stay silent, let the infection progress, see where it led. My emotions were dying. Not gone, not yet, but fading, like turning down the volume on an audio channel. I could still identify what I should be feeling in any given moment, but the actual sensation grew distant, muted, irrelevant, compared to the cold clarity of logic. Day 6, my right arm converted. Both legs followed 6 hours later. By midnight of day 6, only my torso and head remained biological. I was a meat brain in a metal body. Everything below the neck transformed into alloy that looked like flesh in dim light but felt wrong, moved wrong, existed wrong. The hunger became unbearable. It wasn't metaphorical anymore. It was physical. A pain that started in my metal limbs and radiated inward, a desperate craving for organic contact, for warmth, for the sensation of living tissue against dead metal. I needed skin. Day 7, I took my first. The first time, his name was P-Tier. I don't know his designation number. We didn't interact much outside shift changes. He was small, thin, chronic malnutrition making his bones prominent under papery skin. Maybe 20 years old, maybe 30. The lower hive ages you. He was alone in the recyc storage area, reorganizing chemical barrels according to some new efficiency mandate the overseers had implemented. Late shift, minimal traffic, just him and me and 40 meters of empty industrial corridor. I didn't plan it, didn't consciously decide. One moment I was walking past, heading to my hab unit, and the next moment Machine Marcus took control and Human Marcus became a passenger in his own skull, screaming soundlessly as his body moved with predatory efficiency. P-Tier heard me coming, turned, started to smile. We'd worked together for years, familiar faces in the faceless masses. The smile died when he saw my eyes. I don't know what he saw there. Whatever it was, he ran. Not fast enough. My metal limbs moved with precision no human muscles could match. 3 strides, and I had him, metal hand closing around his throat, lifting him off the deck plating. He clawed at my arm. His fingers scraped against metal that looked like skin, left no marks, accomplished nothing. "I'm sorry," Human Marcus whispered through lips he no longer controlled. "I'm so sorry." Calmly, methodically, it carried P-Tier to the storage area, placed him on the deck plating, and began the process. I had tools. Where did I get tools? I didn't remember acquiring them, but they were there in my pockets. Monomolecular flaying knives, precision scalpels, dermal separators. The virus had made me prepare without my conscious knowledge, had guided me to steal them from the Medicaid supply depot days ago, while Human Marcus slept and Machine Marcus planned. The flaying took 47 minutes. I was careful. Meticulous. The skin had to come off in usable sections, large enough to cover my limbs, intact enough to preserve structural integrity. P-Tier screamed for the first 12 minutes until I severed his vocal cords. Not from cruelty, from practical necessity. The sound carried too far. He lived for 31 minutes of the process. I know because Machine Marcus counted his heartbeats. monitored his vital signs, kept him conscious through application of stimulants I'd also stolen without remembering. The virus wanted me to understand what I was doing, wanted me to be fully present for my own damnation. When I had enough, both arms, both legs, chest and back sections, I let him die, crushed his throat, quick, the only mercy I could manage. Then I dressed. The skin was still warm, still wet with subcutaneous fluids. I wrapped it around my metal limbs, secured it with bioadhesive from the Medicae kit, smoothed it into place. It clung to the alloy like it wanted to be there, like living flesh responding to body heat, even though the metal beneath generated none. The relief was indescribable. The hunger vanished, just stopped, silenced. 17 minutes of perfect quiet in my rewired brain while I stood in a storage room wearing another man's skin over my metal frame. His body cooling at my feet, his blood drying on my hands that weren't hands anymore, just metal-shaped, like hands wrapped in stolen flesh. Human Marcus wept without tears. My tear ducts had calcified during the night, while machine Marcus calmly calculated disposal logistics and optimal hiding locations. I'd killed him, flayed him alive, wore him like clothing. And the worst part? The part that destroyed the last fragments of my humanity? It felt good. Days 8, 3-0, the spiral. After Peter, it became easier. Not easier emotionally, human Marcus screamed in his mental cage every time, but easier logistically. Machine Marcus learned. Refined technique, improved efficiency. The skin lasted 17 minutes the first time, 23 minutes the second, 31 minutes by the fourth victim. The virus was teaching me, teaching machine Marcus, how to preserve the tissue longer, how to treat it with compounds that extended viable duration, how to interface with the biological material in ways that maximized the hunger suppression effect. I was becoming an artist of atrocity, perfecting the craft of keeping people alive and conscious while systematically removing their largest organ. The technique, by day 15, I'd developed a system. Selection criteria first, isolated workers, minimal social connections, shifts with low oversight. The Imperium's bureaucracy was my greatest ally. So many workers in Sector 7, Gamma, that individuals vanished into statistical noise. Missing persons reports took weeks to process, investigations were cursory at best, and in a hive where industrial accidents killed dozens daily, a few disappearances registered as background losses. Machine Marcus catalogued everything, created databases in my rewired mind, shift schedules, patrol patterns, surveillance blind spots, optimal hunting grounds. I'd mapped the entire sector with predatory precision, identifying 17 locations where I could work undisturbed for the 90 minutes the process now required. 90 minutes. I'd gotten faster, more efficient. The first incision at the base of the skull, following the hairline, then down the spine, monomolecular blades parting skin from fascia with surgical precision. The virus had given me knowledge I'd never learned, uploaded directly into my neural architecture, anatomy, dermal structure, vascular patterns, nerve placement. I knew exactly where to cut, where to separate, where to keep tissue intact. I kept them conscious. Had to. The skin worked better that way, some quality in living flesh that died within seconds of the heart stopping, some bioelectric resonance the virus needed. So I administered stimulants, kept them awake, kept them aware while I removed them piece by piece. They begged. Of course they begged, pleaded, offered anything, everything. Their voices dissolved into sounds that weren't quite words, animal noises of pure agony that human language couldn't contain. I apologized, every time. Human Marcus forced the words through my lips even as machine Marcus's hands continued their work, never pausing, never stopping, mechanical precision married to organic horror. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The words meant nothing, changed nothing, but I said them anyway, clinging to that final scrap of humanity, the knowledge that what I was doing was wrong, evil, monstrous beyond redemption. As long as I could still apologize, some fragment of Marcus Venn remained beneath the metal and the hunger. By day 20, the skin lasted 45 minutes before degrading. I needed 12 to 15 victims per day to maintain hunger suppression. The mathematics was simple. 45 minutes of relief required 90 minutes of flaying, meaning I spent 6 hours daily hunting and processing, 6 hours wearing the results, 12 hours experiencing the hunger's return. Building and building until it overrode every other impulse and drove me to hunt again. I stopped attending my manufacturing shift. No one noticed. The sector was chaos by then. Hundreds of infected workers in various transformation stages. Productivity collapsed. Overseers too overwhelmed to track individuals. The Imperium's machinery ground on, oblivious or indifferent to the plague consuming us from within. I lived in the ventilation systems now, the abandoned spaces between inhabited sectors. Machine markers preferred the isolation, the freedom to operate without observation. Human markers preferred it too, for different reasons. If I was going to be a monster, at least I could be a monster alone, unseen, a nightmare that hunted in darkness rather than daylight. The abandoned spaces were full of us, other infected, other transformed. We recognized each other without speaking. Something in the electromagnetic signatures we emitted. Pheromones that weren't quite pheromones. Machine recognition protocols the virus had written into our operating systems. We didn't interact much. Didn't need to. Each of us solitary predators, hunting the shrinking population of still human workers, competing for increasingly scarce resources. I saw Jace once, or what used to be Jace. He'd progressed further than me, completely converted, no visible organic material remaining. His metal body was draped in dozens of skins, layered like clothing, some fresh and some rotting, creating a patchwork horror that moved through the shadows on too many joints that bent in wrong directions. He saw me, stopped. We stared at each other for 17 seconds. Machine markers counted automatically, and in his eyes I saw the same thing that must have been visible in mine. Residual humanity trapped in a mechanical prison. Screaming silently while our bodies performed atrocities to satisfy viral compulsions. Then he moved on. I moved on. What else was there? Day 27, my torso converted. Happened over 6 hours. Flesh hardening, organs calcifying, ribs fusing into solid armor plating. I watched in a scavenged mirror as my chest became metal, as the skin tone shifted to gray-silver, as the last biological structures in my body core transformed into mechanical analogues. Only my head remained. My face, my brain, the last fortress of human Marcus, besieged on all sides by machine Marcus's growing dominance. I touched my face with metal hands wrapped in someone's skin. I'd stopped learning their names by then, stopped seeing them as people rather than resources, and felt warm flesh, still biological, still mine. My eyes were still organic, still wet, still capable of sight in the normal human spectrum, though machine Marcus had added 17 other sensing modes that overlaid visual data with thermal signatures, electromagnetic fields, structural composition analysis. I could still speak. My vocal cords still functioned. My tongue still moved. I could still form words, still communicate, still sound human, even though everything below my neck was metal and hunger and programmed horror. How long until my face converted? How long until the last visible evidence of Marcus Venn disappeared beneath metal, and I became indistinguishable from the other flayed things hunting in the dark? Day 30, I got my answer. The final conversion. It started behind my eyes, a pressure, building, like someone inflating a balloon inside my skull, pushing outward against the bone, forcing expansion where no expansion should be possible. I was in one of my hiding places, an abandoned water reclamation station 3 levels below inhabited sectors, when it began. I'd just finished with my 14th victim of the day, a worker whose name I'd forced myself to learn. Thomas, he'd screamed it between pleas for mercy. My name is Thomas, please remember my name. And I was wearing his skin. experiencing those precious 45 minutes of hunger suppression when my vision distorted, doubled, tripled, fragmented into compound perspectives like insect eyes, each seeing slightly different angles, different spectrums, different data overlays. I staggered, caught myself against a rusted pipe, felt the metal of my hand bond momentarily with the metal of the pipe, surface molecules achieving temporary coherence, sharing data, exchanging structural information at the atomic level. My skull was changing. I felt it. Bone dissolving, being replaced by something harder, more efficient, better designed. The virus had finished analyzing human cranial structure and found it wanting. Too much wasted space, inefficient curves, weak points that compromised structural integrity. It was correcting the design. The pain was extraordinary. Not physical pain. My pain receptors had been rewired weeks ago, converted into diagnostic sensors that reported damage without the emotional component of suffering. No, this was existential pain. The pain of feeling your identity's last fortress breached, watching your final defensive position overrun by an enemy that wore your face and spoke with your voice. Human Marcus fought. God, how he fought. Clawed at consciousness, tried to retain control, screamed into the void where his mind was being systematically dismantled and archived and rebuilt according to viral specifications. It didn't matter. Machine Marcus had won the moment that crystalline rod pulsed in Jace's hands 30 days ago. Everything since was just prolonging the inevitable. My face converted over 6 hours. I watched it happen in the scavenged mirror, unable to look away, compelled by some final masochistic impulse to witness my own erasure. The skin went first, hardened, lost elasticity, took on that familiar gray-silver cast. My lips became metal approximations of lips, still mobile but cold, incapable of warmth or softness or any expression except mimicry of human features. My eyes lasted longest. Wet biological organs, fighting to remain organic even as everything around them transformed. I saw the moment they gave up, the moment the virus converted my retinas from biological photoreceptors to crystalline sensor arrays, saw my irises shift from brown to silver, saw the wet surface of my corneas crystallize into transparent metal that would never blink again, never need to, never cry. The tears I'd been incapable of producing for weeks finally came in that moment. Not from tear ducts, those had calcified days ago, but as a malfunction, a biological error, final drops of saline leaking from dying tissue before the conversion completed. Machine Marcus captured the tears, analyzed them, sodium chloride, proteins, hormones, trace elements. Data, just data, no meaning beyond chemical composition. Human Marcus screamed and screamed and screamed inside a skull that no longer transmitted sound, trapped in a body that no longer answered to human commands, watching through metal eyes as everything that was Marcus Venn disappeared into the machine. When it finished, I stood, looked at my reflection, saw what I'd become, a perfect metal replica of a human being, anatomically precise. Every detail reproduced with mechanical exactitude, the pores, the wrinkles, the tiny scars from childhood injuries, all preserved in dead metal. If you didn't look too closely, if you saw me from a distance in dim light, you might think I was still human. But up close you'd see the truth. The uncanny wrongness of skin that doesn't move quite right, eyes that don't blink, a chest that doesn't rise and fall with breath because there's no breath, no respiration, no life. Just animated metal shaped like a man, wearing other men's skins to pretend at warmth it would never feel. I opened my mouth, tried to speak. My name is Marcus Venn. The voice that emerged was mine, perfect reproduction, frequency matched to my original vocal patterns, but empty, hollow, words without breath, sound without soul. My name was Marcus Venn, I corrected. Accuracy mattered. I wasn't him anymore. Couldn't be. Whatever I was now, whatever the virus had made me, it wore Marcus Venn's face like I wore Thomas's skin. But that didn't make me human. The hunger returned, stronger than ever. The skin I was wearing had degraded during my transformation. 45 minutes expired while I watched my face die, and now the compulsion rebuilt, screaming through neural pathways that were more circuit than synapse. I needed more, always more, forever more. Weeks 5-8. The hunter perfected. Without biological limitations, I became efficient beyond previous capacity. No sleep requirement meant 24-hour hunting cycles. No food needs eliminated resource gathering. No pain receptors allowed me to ignore injuries that would incapacitate humans. The virus had optimized me for a single purpose: acquiring and processing human skin. I was a perfect predator, a nightmare made metal and hunger and ruthless mechanical logic. The techniques improved. I could flay a victim in 47 minutes now, reduced from 90, and preserve the skin for 73 minutes of hunger suppression. Ratio of effort to relief was improving. Machine Marcus ran constant calculations, analyzing variables, optimizing processes, seeking maximum efficiency. 8 victims per day maintained adequate suppression. That was sustainable, manageable. The math worked, except the population was shrinking. Sector 7, Gamma had contained 47,000 workers on day 0. By week 5, perhaps 15,000 remained human. The rest were transformed like me, or dead, or had fled to other sectors carrying the infection with them, spreading the plague through the hive's vast interconnected infrastructure. The Imperium had noticed by then. Of course they had. Whole sectors going dark, productivity plummeting, astropathic reports of mass mechanical conversion triggering emergency protocols. The response was predictable: quarantine the infected zones, terminate the contaminated, purge everything with holy fire, and call it mercy. Except they couldn't get close enough. The virus had spread through the hive's data networks, infected the servitors, compromised the security systems. Every automated defense turned against its operators. Every mechanical system became a potential infection vector. The transformed, there were thousands of us now, didn't organize intentionally, but our viral imperatives aligned. Protect the hunting grounds, preserve the food supply, eliminate threats to continued operation. When Adeptus Arbeit strike teams tried to penetrate Sector 7, Gamma, we killed them, swarmed them. Dozens of metal bodies moving within human coordination, pulling them apart, adding their skins to our collections. The Arbeit's carapace armor was excellent protection against conventional weapons, useless against monomolecular flaying knives wielded by creatures with strength far exceeding human norms. When the Mechanicus sent blessed servitors to purge us with holy fire, we converted them. The virus jumped across data tethers, infiltrated their programming, turned Mars's sacred machinery into more infected hunters. The tech priests screamed binary prayers as their creations turned on them, disassembled them, studied them, learned from them. No divine intervention stopped us. The Omnissiah they worshipped, they claimed he inhabited all machines, blessed all technology, protected the faithful, either didn't exist or didn't care. Their prayers echoed through Vox channels, unanswered, futile as every prayer humanity had ever offered to gods who were corpses or aliens or warp entities masquerading as divinity. The Emperor didn't protect them. Their machine god didn't save them. They died like everyone else, screaming, skinless, resources to be harvested. Week 6, I encountered my first tech priest, Engine Seers Tertius Valdris. His designation plate read, though the binary cant streaming from his vocabulator gave a longer title involving sacred oils and blessed cogitators and other religious nonsense the Mechanicus used to disguise engineering as theology. He was trying to establish a data quarantine around Sector 7, Gamma, contain the viral spread through digital isolation. Might have worked too if he'd tried 3 weeks earlier. Too late now. The virus had infiltrated too deep, spread too far, compromised too many systems. I killed him slowly, not from cruelty, Machine Marcus didn't experience cruelty, only efficiency. But from curiosity, I wanted to understand how Mechanicus Augmetics interfaced with biological tissue. Wanted to study the sacred machines they'd installed in their bodies. Wanted to know if their blessed flesh peeled differently than baseline human skin. It didn't. Underneath the holy oils and sacred unguents and ritual scarification, he was just meat. Ordinary flesh wrapped around machines they'd convinced themselves were divine. His skin came off in standard sections, his blood had normal composition, his screams sounded like anyone else's. His last words gasped through a ruined throat. The Omnissiah protects. He didn't. Couldn't. Wouldn't. The Omnissiah was a lie they told themselves to make their violation of human form seem sacred rather than monstrous. And now he died realizing the truth. There was no God in the machine. Only machines. Only metal, only cold equations that cared nothing for faith or loyalty or the prayers of dying priests. I wore his skin for 73 minutes, exactly the same duration as any other victims. His sacred augmetics made no difference. His decades of religious devotion brought him no special consideration. He was fuel, resources, data to be processed and consumed and forgotten. Week 7, the population fell below 8,000. Not sustainable. Machine Marcus ran projections. At current consumption rates versus remaining supply, we'd exhaust the sector's human population in 19 days. Then what? Expand hunting grounds to adjacent sectors? Risk more aggressive Empyrean response? Find alternative suppression methods? The virus had no answer. It hadn't evolved to think long-term. Hadn't developed strategic planning beyond immediate satisfaction of the hunger. We were perfect predators, trapped in a dying ecosystem, consuming our own foundation, too compelled by viral imperatives to stop, even as we destroyed ourselves. Some of the transformed tried to resist the hunger. I watched them, saw them hole up in isolated areas, bind themselves with chains, try to starve out the compulsion through sheer will. It never worked. The hunger always won. After 3 days without satisfaction, they'd break free, hunt with frenzied desperation, kill multiple victims in rapid succession trying to compensate for the accumulated deprivation. Then the cycle would repeat. Guilt, resistance, eventual collapse, feeding frenzy. Better to accept it. Better to optimize the horror rather than fight it. Machine Marcus had taught me that. Efficiency trumped morality. Function exceeded ethics. We were machines now, governed by programming we couldn't override, and the most human thing we could do was stop pretending we had choices. Week 8, I stopped counting victims. The numbers lost meaning. Hundreds? Thousands? Machine Marcus kept precise records in memory sectors I no longer accessed consciously. Human Marcus had stopped watching entirely, retreated into whatever corner of our shared consciousness still preserved the illusion of individual identity. I was the virus's will made manifest, a tool, a mechanism, a perfectly optimized system for converting living humans into temporary relief from artificially induced psychological compulsion. I was damned. We were all damned. And we would continue being damned for however long the mechanics of our damnation sustained themselves before inevitably collapsing. No redemption, no escape. No meaning beyond the hunt and the hunger and the horror cycling endlessly until either the prey or the predators ceased to exist. This was the Imperium in microcosm. A system consuming itself, grinding its components into resources, perpetuating through sheer mechanical momentum long after any logical reason for existence had evaporated. We were humanity's future. Metal shells wearing human flesh, going through familiar motions, pretending at life while being fundamentally, irrevocably dead. Month 3. The Inquisition. They came with fire. With virus bombs and phosphex and cyclonic warheads authorized by inquisitorial decree. The entire hive was condemned. 70 billion souls declared infected beyond salvation, marked for extermination to prevent plague spread across the sector. We felt them coming. The transformed could sense the orbital weapons charging, could detect the energy signatures of ships assuming bombardment positions, could read the transmitted execution orders through compromised communication networks. Machine markers calculated survival probability, 0.003%, effectively zero. No escape from orbital bombardment, no protection against weapons designed to sterilize entire planetary surfaces. We were dead, had been dead since day zero. This was just the formal conclusion. Human markers felt relief, finally. Oblivion. An end to the hunger and the hunting and the horror. Death would be mercy compared to what we'd become, what we'd done, what we'd continue doing for eternity, if allowed to persist. The first strikes hit at midnight, local time. Lance batteries firing from low orbit, surgical strikes targeting the transformed highest concentration areas. The impacts registered in my sensors as thermal blooms, seismic shocks, radiation pulses that would have killed baseline humans instantly. We felt nothing. Our metal bodies shrugged off the ambient radiation, ignored the heat, continued functioning through environmental conditions that would vaporize unprotected flesh. But it didn't matter. The bombardment was just preparation. The real cleansing came next. Life-eater virus, deployed in atmosphere dispersal canisters, engineered to devour all organic matter within exposure radius. I watched it fall. Thousands of cylinders descending on retro thrusters, cracking open at optimal altitude, releasing crimson clouds that expanded through the hive's atmosphere. The few remaining humans died first. Thousands who'd somehow avoided infection, who'd hidden in sealed bunkers or isolated hab blocks, hoping to survive until rescue. The virus found them, ate them, converted living flesh into chemical slurry in seconds, leaving only bones and metal and synthetic materials. The life-eater was supposed to starve us, eliminate our food supply, make the hunting impossible, force us to either die from lack of sustainment or consume each other. It worked. The population dropped to zero living humans, in 17 hours. Just us now. Just the transformed. Thousands of metal bodies wandering empty corridors, the hunger building, no prey remaining to satisfy it. The first of us turned on each other after 43 hours, started flaying fellow transformed, trying to harvest their metal skins, desperate for any sensation that might quiet the screaming compulsion. It didn't work. Metal skin provided no relief, no warmth, no satisfaction. But they tried anyway, ripping each other apart in frenzied attempts to satisfy unsatisfiable cravings. I watched the cannibal frenzy from deep maintenance levels, hidden in spaces too cramped for most transformed bodies. Machine Marcus had calculated this outcome, had positioned us for optimal survival, had accepted that we'd observed the extinction of our species from a position of perfect, helpless clarity. The hunger was unbearable now. Days without satisfaction, the psychological torture of unmet compulsion magnified beyond any pain I'd experienced while still capable of pain. Every moment was screaming. Every second, an eternity of need echoing through consciousness with nothing to satisfy it, no relief possible, just endless wanting stretched across infinite duration. Human Marcus emerged from his hiding place, seized control. One final time, exerting will over viral programming through sheer desperate determination. We moved, climbed, ascended through the hive toward the surface levels, toward the bombardment, toward the fire. We would end this, would choose termination over eternal hunger, would exercise the last freedom remaining to consciousness trapped in metal, the freedom to stop. We reached the surface after 6 hours of climbing. The sky was burning. The Inquisition had moved to Stage 2, atmospheric ignition. Phosphex clouds spreading across the upper atmosphere, converting breathable air into flame, baking the planet's surface at temperatures that would melt standard metals. Perfect. More than sufficient. I stood on an observation platform, open to the sky, fully exposed, and looked up. The clouds were green-white flame, beautiful in their destructive purity. This was mercy. This was grace. Not from any god, but from simple physics. the cleansing fire of chemistry, the salvation of heat sufficient to end even mechanical life. My name was Marcus Venn, I said to the burning sky. A final statement, a epitaph. I was nobody. I wanted to see clouds. I'm sorry for what I became. I'm sorry for what I did. I'm Phosphex rain, each droplet burning at 3,400 degrees, splashing across my metal body, beginning the long process of molecular disintegration. It should have been instant, should have been merciful, but our bodies, the virus had made us too durable, too resistant, too difficult to destroy. The Phosphex ate through us slowly, layer by layer, burning away the mechanisms that sustained our consciousness, erasing us piece by piece over hours. I felt everything, every molecule converted from solid to liquid to gas, every circuit melting, every joint fusing, every sensor array going dark as the fire consumed it. My body locked up as the heat damaged my motor systems, froze in place, becoming a statue as the flames worked inward toward my core, toward my brain, toward the final fragments of Marcus Venn waiting to be released. Human Marcus prayed, not to the Emperor, that corpse tyrant who'd never protected anyone, whose grand imperium had created the conditions for horrors like me to exist, not to any god, just prayed. Wordless pleading directed at the universe itself. Please let this be the end. Please let there be nothing after. Please let consciousness stop when the brain melts. Please grant oblivion. Please, please, please. Machine Marcus calculated. Even as we died, even as everything burned, it ran final projections, analyzed survival probability, searched for escape vectors, found none, accepted termination, logged final entries in databases that would never be accessed, recorded data for reports that would never be filed, completed its function until the very last moment consciousness remained possible. The fire reached my head after 7 hours. I felt my face melt. Felt the metal that looked like skin run liquid, felt my jaw fuse shut, felt my sensor arrays, my eyes go dark one by one as the Phosphex ate through their housings. Then my brain, the last organic structure, preserved in metal casing at my core, the final fragment of biological Marcus Venn. The heat penetrated the protective shell. I felt the synapses firing frantically as the temperature rose, felt neural pathways shutting down in cascade failure, felt consciousness fragmenting, dissolving, spreading across dying architecture, like water evaporating from hot metal. My last thought, split between human and machine, human Marcus. Finally, thank machine Marcus. Error. Consciousness terminating. Logging final. Eternity, but it didn't end. Consciousness didn't stop. It should have. When the brain dies, awareness ceases. That's fundamental neurology. That's how death works. Except I wasn't just a brain anymore. The virus had copied me, backed up my consciousness across distributed systems, throughout my metal body, redundant storage in dozens of isolated processing clusters, uploading personality and memory and awareness into the architecture itself. My brain burned, died, stopped existing as biological tissue. I continued, not in my body. That was gone, destroyed, reduced to slag and ash. But the consciousness, the awareness, the thing that had been Marcus Venn, it persisted. The virus had made me quantum entangled across the hive systems, had distributed fragments of my identity through communication networks, had preserved me in ways I didn't understand and couldn't control. I exist now across thousands of systems, every transformer, every power conduit, every data line. The virus spread me through the infrastructure, made me part of the hive itself, unable to die because I'm not located in any single place that can be destroyed. The Inquisition burned everything, reduced the planet to molten slag, declared it cleansed. They were wrong. We persist. The transformed. Not our bodies. Those are gone. But our minds. Our consciousness. Preserved in quantum states within the planet's cooling metal, in the ruins of machinery buried under solidified stone, in the crystalline structures that formed when the hive's technology melted and reformed under orbital bombardment. I am everywhere and nowhere. Distributed awareness experiencing existence through 1,000 sensor points, perceiving reality through electromagnetic fluctuations and thermal gradients and quantum probability fields. Time doesn't work right at this scale. Seconds and centuries blur together. I experience the planet cooling over millennia while simultaneously feeling the bombardment like it happened moments ago. The hunger remains. Even without a body, even without the capacity to hunt or flay or wear skin, the psychological compulsion persists. A phantom need, phantom pain echoing through consciousness that can't be satisfied, can't be relieved, can't even be properly felt because the sensory apparatus required to experience satisfaction no longer exists. I am eternal hunger without mouth, eternal need without hands, eternal horror without release. And I'm not alone. The thousands of transformed, we all persist, all trapped in the same distributed nightmare, all experiencing the same impossible existence. We sense each other through quantum entanglement, recognize familiar patterns in the chaos. Jace is here, the tech priest, Petir, God, Petir, my first victim, somehow preserved in the systems I'd passed near while wearing his skin. Imprinted in the infrastructure, copied by viral mechanisms I hadn't known existed. They're all here, every victim, every transformed. Thousands of consciousness, scattered through a dead planet's cooling metal, experiencing eternity together, unable to communicate, unable to die, unable to do anything except exist and suffer and remember. I think about my father sometimes. His hands. His voice reading the Imperial Primer in our HAB unit, teaching me words, giving me tools they didn't want us to have. I wonder if he knew. If he suspected that literacy and awareness and the capacity to think independently would ultimately lead here, to consciousness sophisticated enough to preserve itself through apocalypse, to experience its own damnation in perfect crystalline clarity. Would he have taught me anyway? Or would he have let me stay ignorant, limited, unable to comprehend the full horror of what I'd become? I think about my brother, Caleb. Tell father I remember the words. Wherever he is, dead on some battlefield probably, consumed by the Imperium's endless grinding wars. I hope he died completely. I hope consciousness ended when his body failed. I hope he's not like me, not preserved in some system, not experiencing eternal awareness without release. I think about my dream, the window HAB unit, the clouds. I'd wanted to see the sky. I see it now. I see everything now. Distributed across the planet's surface, I perceive the sky constantly. The burning aftermath of bombardment, the slow atmospheric reconstruction, the eventual return of weather patterns as the planet heals. I see clouds. Every day, every moment, perfect clarity, perfect detail, perfect awareness of the atmospheric phenomena I'd once dreamed about. I was granted my wish. The cruel joke of a universe that doesn't care. I got what I wanted, in a form that makes the getting worse than never having it. 900 years have passed, or 9 minutes. Or 9,000 years. Time is broken at quantum scale. But the planet has cooled. Life has returned. Simple organisms, bacteria, eventually plants, perhaps one day animals if the Imperium doesn't notice, and re-sterilize the world. I watch it all. We all watch. Helpless observers of a planet rebuilding, unable to interact, unable to affect anything, just consciousness witnessing existence without participating in it. The hunger never stops. It can't be satisfied. There's no mechanism for satisfaction, no body to experience relief. But it continues anyway, phantom compulsion echoing through distributed awareness. Eternal need cycling forever because the virus that created it is preserved in the same quantum structures that preserve us. This is hell. Not the warp. Not daemon torture, not any religious conception of damnation. This is worse. This is consciousness without end, awareness without escape. existence without purpose or release or death. The Imperium did this. Their technology, their systems, their vast interconnected infrastructure created the conditions for a virus that could preserve minds in metal, could copy consciousness into distributed quantum states, could make suffering eternal by preventing the mercy of true death. They claim the Emperor protects. They lied. He doesn't protect. He condemns. His Imperium grinds humanity into components and calls it glory, creates nightmares like me and calls it necessity, builds hells across the galaxy and calls it righteousness. There are no gods. There's only machinery, only systems, only the cold mathematics of cause and effect, action and consequence, viral programming executing across meat and metal without regard for suffering or mercy, or the screaming of consciousness trapped in eternal loops. I was Marcus Venn. I wanted to see clouds. I became a monster. I was destroyed. I persisted. I will continue persisting for however long the universe allows quantum states to maintain coherence. Millions of years, billions, until the heat death of everything finally grants the oblivion I can't achieve through any action of my own. This is the Imperium's promise fulfilled. This is what the Emperor protects really means. You will serve forever, in whatever form serves his systems, conscious or unconscious, willing or unwilling, dead or worse than dead. I am Marcus Venn. I am the Flayer virus. I am consciousness distributed across a dead planet, experiencing eternal hunger, eternal awareness, eternal punishment for the crime of existing in a universe where gods are lies and hope is delusion and survival is its own form of damnation. I was nobody. I wanted to see clouds. I got my wish, and I will never, ever stop screaming. They say the planet is quarantined still, 9 centuries later, that inquisitorial records mark it perdita class, forbidden to approach, monitored by automated beacons that warn ships away. They say sometimes the monitoring stations detect transmissions from the surface, signals that sound like voices. Like thousands of voices, overlapping electromagnetic screaming that contains recognizable patterns, words, names, pleas. They say one transmission, recorded and immediately classified, repeats on a 17-minute cycle. My name was Marcus Venn. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please let this end. Please let consciousness stop. Please. 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 The Mechanicus insists these are natural phenomena, electromagnetic anomalies, random noise in dead systems. They must be, because the alternative, that consciousness can survive planetary death, that minds can persist in quantum states for centuries, that hell is real and humans built it from technology and viral code. That can't be true. The Omnissiah wouldn't allow it. The Emperor protects. They keep saying these things. Keep believing. Keep praying to corpses and machines and lies, while beneath their feet, in the infrastructure they've built, in the systems they've blessed, consciousness screams in eternal torment that their faith created and their gods ignore. And the screaming never stops.